The new moon is in the sign of Leo, and it highlights the need for emotional security through appreciation. So, being at the center of attention, being loved, being adored. And this might point to someone popular, generous, and much admired by others. Leo also rules theatrical performances, fame, dramatic behavior, and pride in achievement. So matters in some way may be tied to children, lovers, or creative expression. In fact, the Mars in this moon chart is intertwined with matters related to fame and recognition. There's also an emphasis on cooperation, fair play, and being aware of the needs of others. So the one-shot opportunity during this cycle for happiness and success comes through relationship and the motivation to bring harmony and balance to your alliances. But the advice is also to develop independence and self-sufficiency. And at this time, you may need to take the initiative without being dependent on the views of others. In some cases, this will mean addressing legal issues surrounding relationships and business partnerships where cooperation and persuasion, rather than verbal aggression, are called for. Now, for some of you, this moon has a connection to partnership that brings a change to your status. This could be a beneficial shift within your career or professional sphere, and it might also include important changes in your job duties. So it's a good time to focus on career development, any professional opportunities that present. And this moon is in a house of very public view, so it can be very difficult to hide certain facts about yourself, or your reputation plays a greater role, and you may be more recognized in the public. Your reputation plays a role in how you are perceived. So as an example, I'd like to point out that Donald Trump has Leo rising. And as you may have noticed, it's becoming increasingly difficult for him to evade the attention on his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Also, Candace Owens has Leo rising and is being sued by the French president and his wife. But this is an excellent period for any kind of public relations work or sales. More personally, some of you will receive greater recognition through the company you work for because of your job performance. Or you may have more dealings with the public, or maybe you're going to move to a position that involves public service. So during this time, you can receive publicity that's either good or bad. For a few of you, you're looking at job security as it ties to your position or the stability of the conditions of employment. So whatever changes occur at this time are either directly or indirectly within your control, and they come as a result of your influence. Now, the key word for this cycle is leadership. The challenge here is that diplomacy is the key to success, but there are a number of influences working against that. At best, you're exhibiting the character traits that support your ambitions. You're being shrewd and energetic, and even though you have a determined nature, you're still calm. Mars is now in Virgo, and that endows the ability to work with exacting precision or detail, to adapt, to exploit to every situation. But it also lends the urge to criticize, irritability, and nervousness. Because right now, Mars is tied to a star that motivates one to champion the non-mainstream case or work with alternative causes, either with or outside of the law, and to take actions which are designed to shock. And this can be a group or a person that goes outside of society's accepted boundaries. So you can see how this could easily move in the wrong direction. In fact, older astrology interpretations link this Mars star combo with misfortune. And it's noteworthy that a number of famous entertainers have passed away in the last several days, one under tragic circumstances. Malcolm Jamal Warner and Hulk Hogan are both Leos. So this Mars is acting in the form of an accident or an illness or, in rare cases, a surgery. And this is further validated by the conjunction to the South Node while in Virgo, which can manifest as excessive strain on the body that may eventually weaken it, and vulnerabilities to physical health. The Sun, which represents vitality and the very self, is the leader of this moon chart, and it dictates the energy flow and the influence over this entire chart and all the planets that ultimately lead back to it. Of course, a new moon is the Sun and the moon in concert together, and this one is in opposition to Pluto, the symbol of death and rebirth. It also rules sexuality and large sums of money. So this is an opposition that indicates life-changing situations, a threat to the sense of self, and emotional distress, issues with groups of women, stress on the emotional bonds that bind lovers and families together, and could indicate separation from others. Adding to that, the Arabic part of catastrophe is conjoined to a retrograde Mercury in near proximity, representing chaos and disruption caused by unexpected events. In a spiritual sense, though, there's also an element here of dissolving karma to reach personal immortality, to survive the disintegration of the physical body. But again, Mars is making those who fall under the influence bitter, vindictive, and cruel. And with that star, it brings hasty judgment, often leading to regret and public disgrace. So strongly held opinions and beliefs can cause arguments or sometimes be offensive. And this can also reflect potential challenges to your beliefs. Now, Venus is in square to this Mars, which underscores also the possibility of domestic friction, indiscretion in love affairs, and misunderstandings in marriage or with a business partner. And some of these disagreements can be provoked by carelessness over money, overindulgence in the pursuit of pleasures, and being overly concerned with satisfying one's own desires while failing to be aware of the feelings and needs of others. And so that could lead to a separation or a disappointment in romance and social affairs, and a period of extravagance and financial loss. So for men particularly, women may be a source of conflict and the cause of a lot of anxiety. Generally, you will need to watch your temper, or you could find yourself in heated arguments with those you love the most, whether it's a sibling, a child, or a partner. You also need to be careful about your choice of friends, because you could veer toward people who are lacking in good taste and refinement. And you might even be tempted to lower your own standards of moral behavior. In the broader sense, this time frame can highlight a remarkable personality who has an understanding of complex subjects. And this person may be rich, they may be highly sought after, strong, and they can use their power for good or bad. This is a moon to dispel sadness, though. And after depression and despair, that sadness will fade and your sense of personal power will return. And for some of you, that will actually signify a recovery from illness or injury and an improvement in matters of love and friendship. So the card that is naturally assigned to this new moon is the Five of Wands. It's a card of either struggle, ego, petty squabbles, or collaborative teamwork toward building something. So this cycle, there could be some unease. Maybe there are disagreements, whether that's an internal battle or you find yourself defending yourself from others. So there may be conflict and challenges, power struggles to deal with. And for some of you, that will amount to legal problems. So there is a need to get your priorities straight, to look at where there may be a conflict of interest, looking at some form of instability due to exaggeration, and perhaps seeking freedom. So you could be dealing with fierce competitors, people who are malicious or underhanded opponents, or somebody that instigates some kind of contention. And in the positive, there may be some opportunities for you to rise above petty challenges. Maybe you're going to decide to take the noble route. Maybe you're going to volunteer to take on more, to take more responsibility, more accountability, to do more even though maybe you plan to do less. Because you may reflect on the fact that even though you're upset with somebody or about something, you don't want to overstep those boundaries. Now, there can be unexpected events, either at work or at home, that cause you to question yourself, to look at your work, your goals, or the sincerity of the people around you, whether you're getting the kind of support that you need. And it could be that this is a period where you feel like you're struggling in some way because the minute you get rid of one problem, there's something else to take its place. But part of that could be very insistent on a belief or a thought process where you just end up burning yourself out. Maybe you're facing a no-win situation, and because you haven't come to terms with that, you can't relax, but you're not getting ahead either. So for some of you, you're in a situation of struggle or competition or opponents, whether they're open or behind the scenes, where either you or the other person is starting to make a matter harder than it needs to be, harder than necessary. And it may be that one of you is not openly confronting the real issue. There's some dissatisfaction about something, and yet you're not addressing that. You're using something else as an excuse to start a fight or start an argument. And so you may be in this vicious cycle where you can't make up your mind about something. And because it's hard for you to get along with yourself, you can't get along with other people either. Now, when we look at the first clarifier, we have the Page of Wands. This is fire energy. You already have the Five of Wands. That's Saturn in Leo. Now with the Page of Wands, we have Venus in Leo. So a lot of Leo energy. And the Page of Wands says that, there is a change to the plan. But these small changes or surprises are going to make a big difference in your objective, in your agenda. Now, it could be exciting news that you're receiving. Maybe it's about a pregnancy, or it connects to children, or a change in their health, or you're looking at their companions or their behavior. Positively, you're taking notice of some opportunities that are coming available, even though they may be small. Again, the small things lead to something bigger. So there could be some small news that's good, or an invitation, a small gathering, some kind of interruption that you find pleasurable. Maybe you're going to plan a small getaway somewhere, or some unexpected company pops up. So small changes make a big difference in a relationship, your outlook, in your environment. And this could be a period where, you're very curious about things, a pursuit, an interest, and you have this positive outlook given the birth of new ideas, new opportunities. So this is a period where you have a lot of optimism about tying some loose ends up, and it could be connected to something you've been struggling with. So the smallest things have the potential to turn better than you expect. But negatively, if this isn't coming together in cooperation, if you're struggling against someone, you may find it very difficult not to take petty advantage. And maybe part of the struggle is that there are a lot of last-minute changes or disruptions that feels upsetting to what you have going on. And in your connections with others, there could be a twist. A relationship is changing in small ways that you don't like. You can't necessarily put your finger on it or when it started, but it's starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Or again, you're dealing with a lot of small obstacles or inconveniences that tend to get in the way of what you want to accomplish on some level. And at the most negative, you or others are being very childish or selfish or manipulative, and maybe using spite, keeping somebody off kilter, not telling them everything. But in this case, the small things turn into something that is more than you have bargained for. Now, with that, we also have affair. And so in the positive, you feel optimistic. There's a new stimulus toward creative endeavors, and it may be something that you put your finger on that becomes a new craze or a new interest. And for some of you, it's even a new love, some kind of deep, dramatic love affair. And there's also a tie to a showy lifestyle, show business, and which gets back to the astrological interpretation and the tie to entertainers. And there could be a focus on excessive luxury and extravagance. So you could be optimistic about love, about an affair, a romantic adventure, or something creative that you're doing. The next clarifier is the Fool card. So new situations, maybe a fresh start. Maybe you're doing some travel, or there are new opportunities, a new chance. So novel experiences where you're meeting new people. And even though you may not have expected to, you're entering a new chapter of life. And you're being very cautious, perhaps, or should be, in trying to expand your horizons, whether it's literally or figuratively. But this could be a cycle where you're ready to take more responsibility for what makes you happy, what makes you successful. So you may start to take the steps to improve your life in some way. Maybe you start a new job, or you're looking for a new job, or you're deciding to change your residence. You're starting a study program, or you're learning something, or you begin a relationship. So you're making changes to experience something new. And in some cases, you are optimistic with that Page of Wands because you have some renewed self-confidence. So some of you are going to be traveling, moving, or meeting new people in the near future. And this could be a great time to set some new plans in motion. Maybe you need to introduce yourself to people if you're trying to establish something, meeting new acquaintances and connecting to people who have professional or political or influential means to open a door for you. But I have noticed that when the Fool card comes up, there's generally something, unexpected that you're not prepared for, that you're ill prepared to deal with. Something, kind of goes off the rails, and becomes problematic. And so for some of you, you're struggling about something, and there could be some childish behavior involved that lets you know that you're fooling yourself again. You're trying to impress the wrong person or save the wrong person. And maybe that's driven by your desire for personal gain or achievement or to move forward. Maybe you've been too over optimistic about your prospects. And so something could happen that brings a reality check, particularly because you haven't been aware of the needs or feelings of other people. So common sense is important. Now, in the positive, the new situation has a connection to inspiration. And maybe this is something that you're working on. Maybe you're a writer, or you tell a story. You're very imaginative. Or maybe you're constructing a dream world, and that's positive or negative. Because the flip side is confused or just wishful thinking, more fantasy than anything else. Or maybe you're inventing excuses, or maybe someone is even inventing lies. So there's something occurring where instinctively you know the answer because your intuition is telling you, but maybe you're refusing to face up to it. And last, we have the Four of Swords. So there's a challenging situation because of some kind of change. Now, it could be that this ties to vacation, that small getaway, and then something unexpected occurs. Or maybe there's a need to recuperate from an illness, or someone is in the hospital, or they're a patient. Maybe somebody's an unwelcome guest. So this could be a situation where there's a need for contemplation, to reconsider a position, to retreat from a circumstance and regroup. Now maybe, you were optimistic about something and it's a slow period. Or maybe there's a need to get back to spiritual values, especially if there's been some kind of unexpected situation that may have caused an illness or a death, or someone is recuperating, or there's been a lot of stress. So there could be some withdrawal, some introspection for a situation, or maybe, connecting to someone who can help. But there's also a lack of communication, a lack of activity that is either welcomed or not, given a circumstance. So it could be you were motivated, excited, and things didn't go as planned, or someone maybe was childish or manipulative, and now there's a lack of communication. People aren't speaking to one another. And so for some of you, you're trying to figure out what the next move should be. Either something has happened that has restored your faith in a situation, or something has put your security at risk. And it's affected your motivation as well. Maybe you have recently ended some kind of process, and now you have to, get things back in order. So there's a temptation here to go to extremes. Either you're trying to do too much, or you're not doing enough. Now, again, some of you have reached this mark where you're just taking a break. Maybe you need some time to yourself. Maybe you're taking a vacation, or maybe you haven't heard from someone. But you're not jumping to conclusions. Your imagination is not running away with you. Maybe you need a break to work on some project that requires imagination. But for others of you, there's just too many things hanging in limbo, too many loose threads, and maybe you don't know what to do. And maybe it's because something has occurred that you weren't prepared to deal with. And so maybe, your response is you just want to wish the problem will go away. Maybe you're doing a lot of sleeping, or maybe you think you can still save something or resurrect a dead issue because you're denying the facts. So for some of you, you're struggling because your options are limited. And some of you are waiting to get an apology from someone where they overstepped a boundary, or you want a detailed explanation about why something occurred the way that it did. And, If you were in the wrong, though, maybe you don't want to talk about that thing. Maybe you want to just quietly sweep that under the rug. But this is a cycle where if you refuse to confront an issue or a circumstance in a timely manner, it will actually complicate, create a snowball, and jeopardize other matters. So we have a struggle going on, or the opportunity to work as a team. There's something that either inspires you to make some small changes, or some small changes are starting to turn a situation to the negative. And with the Fool card, you're having a new experience. Either you're excited about that, or it's something you're not prepared for. And the Four of Swords could be a welcome break to deal with it, or a break because you now need to figure out exactly what to do. And part of that may tie to some kind of quarrel. All is not well in the family environment. Maybe this is the continuation of a family disagreement. Maybe it pertains to a family estrangement. You might be fighting over an inheritance or a piece of property, or perhaps you're in a situation where there's a divorce or a problem involving custody, or maybe the quarrel is about an extramarital affair or something that didn't go as planned in a romance. So again, you're dealing with change, new situations, and challenging developments.